The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
I like the bass in my voice right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's from the early morning coffee, butter coffee.
Late night, early morning.
I actually, those are actually some of my favorite times. Like, I kind of like want to start recording on days where I've just like been up all night and just get like extra bass in my voice.
Totally. Sometimes I'll do like a morning broadcast like from an event, and the sun's coming up, and I'm like, "Good morning, everyone."
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm gonna do the intro thing. All right. Hey, it's episode number 134. It is 320 days till the man burns as of this recording. Are we recording? Yeah, we're recording. We're recording.
Yes.
That's right. It's our first episode since Burning Man 2022. Hey, did y'all read that amazing piece on Medium by Buck Down entitled "What the Fuck Just Happened at Burning Man"? Boy, the name of that piece just alone immediately caught our collective attention because we've all been wondering the same thing. Well, it turns out Buck Down lives like 7 minutes away from me. So I kind of stumbled over to his house and recorded an interview with him this last week, which I am excited and eager to share with you maybe next week. I don't know, I'll get around to it. It's burner time. But today is our annual tradition.
Yay!
Yeah. That was a person. I'm gonna hang out with Halcyon. That's whose voice you're hearing. And we're gonna shoot the shit about our personal experiences this year. Today's show doesn't really need much introduction. It's the thing we do every year. If you don't know who Pink Heart and Hug Nation founder Halcyon is, you're probably the type of person who believes that Daft Punk is playing at the trash fence. But this is good. But if you do know who Halcyon is, you're probably the type of person who is all too familiar with that Daft Punk joke and has this great memory of that one year where a couple of guys cosplayed as Daft Punk and quote unquote played, I'm doing the quoties, a set at the trash fence. And it was hilarious. I'm going to see how much deeper I can go with this joke. If you do know who Halcyon is, but you don't know who the fuck I am, you're probably the type of person who is all too familiar with that Daft Punk joke, but is also absolutely certain that there was this one year that Daft Punk definitely totally played a low-key set at the trash fence that only you and a handful of other strung-out burners were lucky enough to catch. If you don't know who either of us are,
Hi.
It's weird that you're listening to this show, I guess. Like, what are you, a fucking narc? Okay, so, all right, I've sufficiently beaten that joke to a bloody pulp. After today's chat with the pink one himself, you'll be treated to a booty shaky set by Nicole Cayenne. This set was recorded at sunrise atop the Smile High art car at the trash fence at this last Burning Man. The Smile High art car was parked exactly on the spot where the art car that may or may not have had Daft Punk play on it was parked at one year that you swear you caught them at the trash fence. I know because I was there. Not for Daft Punk, for Nicole's set. And it was my only sunrise, so I'm kind of psyched to be just barely important enough to share this set with you listeners. It's really fun. It's really cool. That's going to be after our chat. But yeah, let's get into Halcyon and I's annual TMI challenge. Today's episode is entitled Daft Punk. No, I'm just kidding. Burning Man 2022 recap with Halcyon. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was the fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one
Oh my God, that I heard so much about that. That's amazing. That's a prank that seems to happen like on some level every year, but this year, like I think whoever did it really set it up perfectly. I think where it was like in a super tight street or something, and it got a lot of attention.
Enough time had passed since Daft Punk, and enough new people were really excited. It's that thing of like. You find evidence for whatever it is you already believe. So people just are like, yeah, Rufus Del Sol's going to be there. But yeah, I guess I did not make it to the non-event, but apparently it was perfect.
Yeah, my understanding was that it was on a very tight street. Like it was a tight and busy space, so it made it particularly hilarious or horrible, depending on which side of that experience you were on.
Well, my memory of the Daft Punk prank was that the first time was Daft Punk was inside the city, and it was in fact I remember going the first time, not at the trash fence, but deep in the city on the 2:00 side, and nothing being there. And then as this huge crowd is there and it's all dark, I'm like, wait, Daft Punk? Oh my God, this is great! Yeah. And then it became a trash fence thing. At least that's my memory. But then
what year was that?
Oh my, I honestly have no idea.
So you are certain it was Daft Punk?
The prank that I got.
Okay, it was a prank.
It was absolutely a prank.
Okay.
Inside the city, and
because I read multiple times that like there's never been any confirmation that those guys have attended the burn. It
definitely was not Daft Punk the time that I went. Definitely. But I think that then people are saying, "Oh, we just got Daft Punked. We just got Daft Punked." I was like, "Okay, that's awesome."
Oh, now the joke makes sense. Like it kind of started with that phrase.
That's how, at least that's how I first fell for it.
That makes sense. That makes complete sense. There was a year that this is a friend of a friend at like Mystical Misfits. Like this DJ was his first year on Playa, and he had a set scheduled. And one of the other guys from camp got it into the guide that it was Carl Cox playing at their camp. And their camp is big enough and elaborate enough where if you got there, you wouldn't think like, you'd think like, oh yeah, Carl Cox could play at this camp. Yeah. But the guy playing was obviously not. I think it was like a skinny white guy from Canada, right? Literally the complete opposite of Carl Cox. And yeah, he had this giant crowd of people that showed up for his set. But what I've heard is that his set was actually good enough where like people who were like, that's not Carl Cox, still stayed and said, okay, it was a great set.
Good
like,
for him.
I'm glad I was here.
and then screw anybody that looked for Carl Cox and was upset. You know, there was one year when I was with Backcountry that some people in my camp threw an event. It was mimosas and samosas.
Yeah.
And it was in the guidebook for Tuesday, although they intended to do it on Wednesday. So, or the opposite. So a bunch of people showed up on the wrong day. And it was shocking how many people were upset. Like they're like, what? You're supposed to have mimosas. We were like, what? And so then the idea was the next year we were gonna put that, in the book on the wrong day. And then when people, if they showed up and people go, what? You just go, bye. But if they go, oh well, what do you have here? Then you go, just kidding, the mimosas over here.
Yeah. That's a funny experience that I don't have a frame of reference for. Like I want to be able to understand what it's like to be that frustrated to have shown up for something and it wasn't there. But I feel like, and this isn't, by the way, me bragging about how chill I am. It was because Burning Man beat the living shit out of me from my first year, and I gave up having any expectations pretty much immediately.
Well, I'm always like, I get a better sense this year, like how many people go to the burn and then seek out like the food camps to get their meals. And like these huge lines of people going to get their food. And I'm always like, whoa, I've never had much patience for a line that's over 2 minutes. And I certainly am not depending on other people for my food. And so like, that seems like a very foreign experience to me to depend on a guidebook for anything.
Yeah. The Chomp guidebook, like really.
It was impressive.
I
just glanced at it and was like, I'm sure that's interesting for some people.
We utilized it Saturday. It was actually after the DJ set that you'll be hearing after this conversation. After that set, we were trying to figure out where we can go get some food. And, it was like an all-nighter, and we've been up for 23 hours. And there it worked. I have yet to experience midnight poutine. And it's like the thing that every year people talk about, and I've been hearing about and then every time I go by it, I'm like, yeah, that line is like an hour. I'm not doing that.
Here's as I'm talking this and sounding like a grumpy old man, that I think that there's this beautiful opportunity of looking at the city as places where there are cracks you can fill.
Yeah.
Knowing that there are these lines at food camps all over the place, it would be fun to go into the burn thinking about some interactive art type thing that you could do in food lines.
Right.
You know? Like walk through the line and have little performances. Or, hey, here's a card. Go talk the person 5 people up. And
I love that.
See if you can find a place on their body that they'll let you draw on with a Sharpie. Or, some way. Because that's the thing that kind of makes me go, oh, that's unfortunate, is to see these huge lines of people where people are just waiting to do something. I'm like, how could you spend any time here not doing something? Either rest or see stuff or meet people.
You are so right. I've had some amazing experiences in lines.
Me too.
And it's been. You're right. Once we take like our attitude out of that of like, oh, I'm just line for blah blah blah. You know, like
you're right.
There's cool shit that can happen. Just this year, I was in line at Costume Cult because I've always, I've been aware of Costume Cult like forever, but I'd never actually gone in and had the experience. I even interviewed their leads like in New York.
They're great.
I don't know, 5 years ago. Yeah. It was an amazing interview. It was an amazing experience. But so finally this year, I'm like, I'm gonna go do this. For one thing, because it was so fucking hot this year that I was wearing the same 2 or 3 things out of my 2 bins of clothes that I brought. I just couldn't even put on anything else. So I go to Costume Cult. I'm waiting, and I had just had some feelings that had come up about something totally unrelated. And I had my little notebook out, and I was jotting down what the feelings were and setting the intention to shift my energy so that I can enjoy this experience rather than go in there with this like dark cloud over my head. Mm-hmm. And this gal standing next to me, she's like, "What are you writing?" And I turned to her and just lay it all out. Like it's like deeply personal TMI, like all of the emotions, all of the personal story, all of it, like everything. And she just doesn't even miss a beat, dives right in. And it was her first burn. Nice. And that was like what we kind of gushed about, is that this right here is the reason we go to Burning Man, because any random person, I can just like dive all the way into the deep end with no hesitation in a way that you can't get away with as much in a
it's a much higher risk endeavor.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's funny. I had the same thing where I ended up wearing my fishnet tank top every day because it was the closest thing I could get to being naked in the heat. And it was so disgusting by the end of the week, but I just couldn't bear to put anything else on. Yeah.
Same. I went through all my underwear, but that was about it. And I heard that immediately upon us leaving, the temperature got really nice.
Of course it did.
The final day I was there, we were breaking down the Phoenix art project that I was involved with, and it was 101 or 102. And I think right about then is like when my COVID had probably like gotten into my system.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't realize that, but I mean, there's so many people on Playa who had COVID who it was already mixed up with so many other like things, like the desert and all the other crap and feelings and emotions that like, you're like, there's just one more thing in the mix.
That's so funny. I'm in the same boat where like, I know that I tested positive for COVID when I got to Reno.
Right.
But I don't know when I actually got it. I certainly was very sick at the burn. I didn't test positive when I was there, but I don't know if it was just the heat and exhaustion and dehydration that put me out, or if it was the beginning of COVID that wasn't testing yet, or if I was being punished by some deity for my arrogance and thinking that I knew how to do Burning Man. I don't know.
It could be all of the above.
Probably.
You could have been being punished by AD80 by being given COVID.
There was a moment when I was laid out in my RV. And when I say RV, I should say it's an 82 RV. This is not some plush, cool thing. I was able to get the place around my bed down to 90 degrees. The rest of my RV was 117. I had a little thermometer there. And as I'm in my bed, so sick I couldn't get up, I had a poop bucket next to my bed, and I was just, I couldn't get out of bed for like 48 hours. And I was like screaming. I'm like,
Oh, no.
Anybody that's ever watched one of my videos and taken my advice, don't listen to me. Save yourself.
Oh, no.
Actually, I made a note to put out to my campmates that said, somebody please check on me every hour. And then I had check boxes because I was like, I'm really scared that if people just think I'm resting for a couple days, that something really bad could happen. I ended up going to medical, and
What was this? This was COVID or it wasn't COVID?
I don't think so.
Okay, you got sick from something.
I got exhaustion, fatigue. I was constipated.
Yeah.
And then I was
You were all kinds of
everything.
not sexy.
And then it was ugly.
Yeah.
And really missed out. I was able to kind of stumble my own way through the beginning of the week, did the events that I scheduled on Thursday, and then was out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then was able to move around on Sunday. Which is not to jump into the challenges or the what the fuck happened.
Certainly.
But there was so many factors that made the rewards of this year's Burning Man so much less than in years past for me.
Yeah.
And one was that thing of, the heat was so difficult that people were less active and less going out to do things. And so, not just the same amount of effort to build the camp with the heat and the dust storms, it's more effort to build and to do all the things, and then to have fewer people venturing out.
Right.
So you have, it's like spending, a week making a Thanksgiving meal, and then 2 people come to eat. You're like, oh man, this is.
Yeah.
And then when I went down for that time, then it was this huge chunk of time that normally I'm out trying to meet people and connect with the people that I have digitally connected with all year. Just didn't get those connections. I said that I probably met 10% of the people I normally would at a burn. And after not just a year of being behind a computer, which is the normal cycle, a year, and then you get to go to the burn and fill up. It was multiple years. And so having this like many years of deficit of human connection to this burn family, to get there and not get to fill my belly like I am used to was a really difficult thing to let go of.
Yeah.
And I know that one of the core lessons of Burning Man, whether it's Daft Punk or A Line for Midnight Food, is surrender. You got to surrender. It was like the universe was like, "Oh, did you forget that?
Yeah.
Well, then we're gonna make you learn it real hard this year."
No, certainly. Everything, 90% of what you're describing was the same things that I was experiencing. It was physically difficult. It was, for me, it felt like it was physically the most difficult burn I've ever had.
For me, by far.
And I keep kind of reviewing and I know this, this on this next episode, you'll hear Buck Down's analysis and all this. But yeah, I felt, I kept kind of like tracking back, like you're, I'm like, what am I doing wrong here?
Yeah.
Like, I'm actually in better shape and health than I've been in previous years. I have my shit together. Things are pretty planned out well. Yeah, the heat was particularly rough. I would say the second half of the week, it's entirely possible that some of those COVID symptoms were showing up and I just wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
But the first half of the week is where, this was all the way towards the end. I got it because gosh, burn night, the city fucking cleared out. It looked like Monday.
We broke down before the burn.
Yeah, a lot of camps did. We're just looking around and people were just like, fuck this, we're out of here.
We had to break down at night too. We decided early in the week. I was like, hey guys, there's no way we can achieve a strike during this heat.
Yeah,
there's no way. And so our team in charge of strike figured out, well, we're going to have multiple shifts burn night starting at midnight, 4-hour shifts. So you had to work a certain amount of shifts during the night.
It's a good idea.
And thank goodness we did that, because even doing that, we still kind of met our normal strike deadline of trying to do before the temple burn.
Yeah, at night it was about as hot as it usually is.
Yeah.
Like in dusk.
It was
like
it never cooled off.
It never cooled off. Yeah. I think it was around Monday or Tuesday that because I had the same thing. I was like, there's all these people I wanted to connect with. I had a list of places that I wanted to go and connect with friends. we had our Burner podcast happy hour thing happening on Thursday. But come around Tuesday, I just gave up completely. Like the road, I felt like the roads were particularly fucked up, and like just every time I rode my bike anywhere, I felt my bones smacking into each other.
It was, and the thing is, I am about as well outfitted as a burner can be.
Yeah.
You know, I've got an e-bike with shocks. I've got a ton of amazing people on my team to help out. I've got people that help me with food and everything. And it was still so hard. I think about people that were, you know, without the same kind of resources, or, I mean, it was grueling. And there was, you know, I know people that, you know, I'm also as old as I've ever been at the burn. So that made the heat and other things more difficult. But, you know, I know people, like I was considering I was trying to get my dad to go you know, about a year ago, and he was thinking about it. And this year, as I was totally unable to take care of myself, I was like, thank God my dad's not here.
Yeah.
You know, I can't imagine how bad I would have felt if...
Everyone who missed it, I'm like, you picked a good year to miss. It was... it has all continued to still be very amusing and entertaining to me. I know, like the short version of it is that the Medium article that went viral, Buck Down's analysis was that there was a lot more stuff happening in our heads than we were willing to admit. I do feel like it was physically more difficult. I definitely do think the fact that we took, you know, a couple of years off from that experience added to it. I think there was a lot of stuff that we got used to that shifted. So the experience of it being physically difficult out there was more amplified. I know, like last year when you and I recorded, it was after the Renegade burn, and we were there for what, like 3 or 4 days, right? Like, were you there? I was there for 4 days.
That sounds right.
Yeah. And it was quite pleasant,
Very
actually.
much so.
It was, the weather was pretty nice.
Yeah. I felt like that did not prepare me for this year. Yeah, because you know, my friend Brock and I had come out, and the whole time we kept commenting on what a pleasant experience this was. It was so easy to get in and out. The weather was fairly moderate. I don't know if that's the word. We, to some extent, tragically, were able to take advantage of the smoke cover because the wildfires that were happening near us, and I think like that blocked out some of the sun. Interesting. Yeah.
It wasn't that bad.
And I think there's some people who are, you know, have more challenges with cold. For example, there's some people I know that the thought of a freezing night that you have to wear a fur coat is like that's their kryptonite. And a hot day.
God, I love that.
They're like, yeah. Some people are like, oh man, yeah, I live in Phoenix. You know, this is. I'm like, other people. This was really tough. Man, like for the first time ever, after 24 years of going to Black Rock Desert, my mouth said the words, I don't think I can do this again.
Totally. I heard that from a lot of people. Yeah.
I'm not in that headspace now. I had an interesting experience where, so once I got to Reno after the burn, and people would ask me like, well, what, you know, tell me about the burn. And I literally couldn't think of anything good. Like my illness chapter and the places that my mind went when I was so ill and couldn't participate in camp things and couldn't help with strike as much as I wanted to. I felt so guilty and felt so. It was like a traumatic experience, and so then my brain wouldn't get past it, and I really had to spend a lot of energy at the burn and then the weeks afterwards, talking to people and looking through pictures and remembering, oh my gosh, lots of good stuff happened.
Yeah.
It just wasn't the same, you know, feast of awesome that I'm used to. And
we had high expectations.
Yes.
We had very high expectations after 2 years.
Yes.
It was arguably impossible expectations to meet after, you know, having taken 2 years off of it and being so excited about having exactly this kind of experience, right? But we get out there, it was difficult, and it seems like our interpretation of that difficulty was amplified to some extent as a result of our high expectations of what this experience should be like.
Right. I think there's also, when we're back every year, you don't get too far from the pain.
Right.
You know, like
Totally.
I have tons of videos where I'm talking to people. I tell people, hey, this is not a vacation.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna cry probably. You're gonna if you want a transformative experience, you don't want a vacation in the desert. You want to be pushed so that you grow.
Yeah.
And I say those words, but enough time had gone by that they just were words.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of forgotten how much it can hurt and how difficult it can be. Kind of like I guess the human body is supposed to work that way so that you forget how painful labor is, so that you have another kid.
That makes sense.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. No, completely. Every year, and again, same thing. I say these words out loud. I say these words out loud, and then I fucking forget them.
Yeah.
Every year, I forget that it takes like 3 or so days simply to acclimate to the physical environment. At least this year, I logically remembered it because I'd been repeating it enough times, and specifically because I had recorded a video that I didn't hit live on yet. But it's like the 2 or 3 questions that people most often ask of me about Burning Man, people who are not burners. And one of the 3 questions is, I just want to do it for like 3 days. Can I do it for like 3 days? And it is specifically that number. For whatever reason, the 3-day number seems to be a thing that people who have not had, I don't know, more difficult experiences, like tell themselves they have the threshold for. And I always tell people that, 1, yes, you can. Don't fucking let anybody tell you how to burn. 2, I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
Because it takes 3 days simply to land into the physical environment. You're not even there yet. You're not really there until like the 4th day, in my observation, in my opinion. Then you've like started to strip some things away. Then you've remembered, oh wow, like this is another dimension.
Yeah.
This is not an event. This is not, when people say this is not a festival, I think like that's the part that's missing.
That's good advice, because I think that you're right. It takes, for 3 days, you can hold on to all the things that are important to you about your default life.
Right,
You know,
right.
you can be, I can't wait till I get my next shower.
Yeah.
But after 3-4 days, you're like, I'm gonna be this dirty. Or I don't have the same control. I don't have the same timelines or the same. And I think you're right. It doesn't.
It's the surrender point.
You got to surrender.
Yeah.
And if 3 days, there's not enough distance between you and the shore to
Yeah.
feel like you're actually floating.
Yeah, 100%. And then something happens at that moment where, like you realize, like, I have no choice. I am here. Oh shit, I have to figure out, like, this was a big thing for me. I have a weird habit of like leaving like backpacks and bags and stuff just in general in my life. I leave them unzipped or open, or I'll leave like cupboards open. And it's like some fear of commitment.
I get you. Yeah.
So at Burning Man, for example, like I've definitely had this experience where like I would set up my things, but I didn't want to fully commit to the idea that this is going to be my home because it's temporary. So this is a relatively new thing after this many years where I finally am like doing that. I'm committing to, this is my house. Like I need the things set up. I want to drill these things in. I'm going to decorate inside my tent a little bit, which I historically never did that because it was always like, this is just temporary. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, I think I'm the same way. And in fact, most of my life I've been someone that doesn't like put nails in the wall for their pictures. 'Cause it's like, I don't know, I'm not going to live here forever.
Totally.
And so the burn has been the same way for me, where I have not committed too much to my living environment, but I'm the same way. I've had enough friends in the last few years that have got to the burn or an event or something and just really invested into making their space awesome for the next 3, 4, 7 days. And I'm like, oh, like life is more awesome when you invest in your future in all different ways.
Totally. And it's so this is interesting. I don't remember the exact verbiage here, but it's this concept of like diffused focus and not diffused focus. I don't remember the word. But I've been taking in a lot more like neuroscience lately, and I'm just kind of like connecting that to some of my meditation practices and such. And I'm doing some like guided meditations with Joe Dispenza, for example. And the difference in how he does it is that he tries to get your mind into the space, and it's connected to like the neuroscience part of it, where you become aware of the inner space in your body, and then you become aware of the outer space in the room. And the idea is to become aware of both of those things at the same time. So like the micro and the macro. And when you and I are having this conversation about our spaces, what's hitting me is that in the past, I would have looked at it just as like, well, this thing's going to be done and I'm going to move on to the next thing. But what Burning Man teaches us is it works out that muscle where those two things exist at the same time. Yes, this is a temporary space, but I'm also going to put my energy into it as if it's not, as if I'll be here forever, even though I have a full awareness that it's only here for like 10 days.
Yeah.
And to be able to do both of those things at the same time, it's my favorite quote is F. Scott Fitzgerald says, test of a first-rate intelligence. Hold on, how does it go? Test of a first-rate intelligence is one that's able to keep two opposed thoughts in mind at the same time and yet still retain the ability to function. And that is what Burning Man teaches us, like the beauty of impermanence, but then to also like dive into that and fully be present for it.
Yeah, and I love that. I hadn't thought about that, but that idea of investing in your temporary space that you live in is a very parallel idea to embracing the value of art that's going to be burned, for example.
Yeah.
That this transitory celebration is contrary to a lot of, I think, how we are taught as, investing towards a future thing as opposed to an immediacy that is a balance between how much of my energy in this moment am I going to use, even if it's not going to be some pot of gold at the end.
Right. Right. And a lot of what we're talking about, and I want your thoughts on this, is I feel like we're exploring a lot of our attachments to what something was supposed to be and how, let's say, heartbreaking it was to discover that was not the case, right? Okay. An experience that I've had this past year, I found I was quite lucky to take into the burn with me. What was that?
I think my computer thought you said Siri.
That was creepy. But yeah, there was this. Don't worry about it. There was this feeling. So throughout the year, we were planning various things for the Phoenix Syndrome art project that I was involved with, and a lot of things kept not happening. Like one of the big things that happened is that we had a real difficult time making events happen. We wanted to do some more like happy hours and like art shows and stuff in San Diego. And what we discovered is that a lot of our connections in our network were not where they were pre-pandemic. We had this idea in our heads that, I know the manager of so-and-so bar. I know so-and-so who runs so-and-so place, right? And it was a lot easier before the pandemic to just like send out a few texts and make an event happen. And then after, I kind of like ran into this project with all this bravado, like, I got this, I know all these people, and then, nobody was available. Or like people had moved on to different jobs, or like the business was no longer operating the same way, a bunch of things. So over and over, I experienced the disappointment of feeling like I had not like lived up to the expectations that I and my team had for how we were going to like raise money for this project, for example.
Yeah.
But what I also experienced was that it feels like people in general are more forgiving than they've ever been.
Yes.
When things don't quite happen as planned. And I experienced that on Playa as well.
Yeah.
It felt like, burners are usually pretty chill in my experience, but the experience that I had was that people were also like, oh, it didn't work out. That's okay.
Yeah. I think you're so right. I think that like in the last year, I really became aware that it's totally acceptable to just change your Facebook RSVP from a yes to a no.
Yeah.
Like everyone goes, I get it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past it'd be like, I'm so sorry, things came up, or I'm not up for it. Now it's just like, hey, I'm just not up for it.
Yeah.
Totally cool. It's cool. We are all doing the best we can. I got you. I had a very similar, like when it was so hot, and my camp had a different location than we'd had in the past, and there was all sorts of stories about that, and if it was a punishment or if it was good or bad. It ended up being a good learning experience, and hopefully not the way it is next year. But
you want to be back on Esplanade next year?
Yes.
All right. I want to hear all about that.
I feel like we could really contribute to the city in a much more dramatic way from Esplanade as we have in the past. So there was this real guilt feeling that I had towards the people who had invested so much time, and sometimes I felt like I overpromised what we were going to be able to do. Yeah, because of the change, and so luckily we have a real family vibe, and I shared very publicly how my guilt feelings, and of course everyone's like, oh, no, like please don't think that. No one is thinking that. No one is upset. No one is, but across the board, I think a lot of us had to go through that process of first our own expectations, and also some of the guilt of letting people down.
Yeah. One of my favorite lessons from this podcast journey was actually from you and I's first interview, where you were describing, it may have been like your first year that Pink Heart was happening, and you were running around profusely thanking everyone. Yeah. Like aggressively, profusely, like, thank you. Oh my God, thank you. And, and then at some point it hit you like, wait a minute, like, this is kind of like, I'm almost thanking them as if like they're doing me a favor, right. But no, they're owning this as much, like we all own this. This is ours. Yeah. It's not just this martyr complex for me.
Yeah, that was a huge shift, and it kind of almost embarrassing to look back.
I can tell you, I reference that regularly. Like every time I'm working on a project, I'm very constantly in leadership positions, and I look at it that way. And every time I start to like take on some of that energy, I'll remember your story, and I'll remember, and everyone is on board, by the way. I've yet to be in a situation where anybody's like declined that. And then whenever somebody's disagreed with me on that, it's been people that have not been on the fucking team. And I'm like, oh, that's why you're not on the team.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And that's, on a big macro, my life dharma level, I try to share these things and the struggles and the lessons, because I do feel like we're all going through so many similar things, so that even if it's something that is not maybe a proud moment for me, the process of going through it can help us all learn from it. And you're right. So you're right. I'm not ashamed of that. That was a beautiful lesson. And so now as I'm walking around camp, and especially now that I'm not as physically strong as I used to be. So as I'm walking around to the campmates and noticing them doing a good job, I'm saying thank you and good job, but not because they did it for me, just because like they know that I have a more experience with the camp. I have more experience with the burn. I have maybe a broader idea of what we're trying to do. And so I want to make sure they know that they're fucking nailing it. Not for me, but as a potential speaker for all of us. Yeah. Thank you.
There is a different vibration underlying thank you that feels like it's comrade to comrade, rather than thank you as I'm important and you're doing me a favor.
Yeah. And I think, because it always feels good to be noticed and appreciated. Yeah. And whether that, and I really try to do that as I go to other camps as well. Like, if I walk through a dance floor and there's no one there, I really try to get the eyes of the DJ and like give him like a nod and say, hey, I hear you. I appreciate this. Yeah. Awesome. Because we all have this currency, this ability to make people's lives better by showing them appreciation. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that Burning Man is so good at too, is is recognizing how much joy we can get from making people's moments and lives and worlds better.
Yeah.
That kind of shift from a traditional success metrics to I want to make as much money as I can to I want to blow as many minds as possible. And so when you know that, oh, I can tell people they're blowing my mind and stoke them out. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's do that. Let's tell them this food was great, or that, your art is amazing, or your shoes are just delightful. And your campmates, like, wow, you really took this on yourself and made it so that all of us could relax more. So thank you.
Yeah. I use the love reaction on social media a lot more than the like.
I always wonder if I say like, do people go, did you not love it?
Yeah. Well, for me, generally speaking, for me is like is affirmative. Like I understand and I agree.
I see it. I've seen this. That's
Yes.
me. Like as I've seen it,
Yeah.
love is
Is like,
And
fuck
I
yes.
use care a lot too. The hug emotion.
Yeah. I was trained pretty well my first burn with Jim Robbs was my co-pilot my first couple of years, and I remember like watching him walk around and constantly like thanking rangers. Like anytime people was walking, and that became just a habit for me, and it was something I took into default with me, and I have lost track of how many amazing connections have come as a direct result of this habit that I picked up on Playa, which is like simply communicating people like, you did this thing and that took some work, and I just want to tell you, like, I appreciate that, I appreciate you, and thank you.
I think compliments is one of the best tools that we have to bring Burning Man style living into the default world. You practice it on Playa and you compliment everybody, but giving someone a compliment is this really rapid opening up to someone else. And it's a little bit of a vulnerability. You're not trying to, show power over them. You're trying to lift them up. And it's really incredible how often it can lead to a deeper thing. And one of the reasons that I have pink hair year round is because when there's somebody out there in the world that has a burner heart, they will often go, "Hey, I love your hair." And then I respond, and pretty soon, this happened last week. I was in Connecticut, and this very large person that you wouldn't put us next to each other and say, oh, they look like they're in the same tribe, walks by and just goes, "Man, I love your hair." Next thing we know, we're having this long conversation, we're hugging, and it was like, that was like a Playa encounter. And I think it's really important to remember that there are literally millions of people out there that have the heart of a burner in them that are just waiting for permission. And so whether it's a compliment or a wave or a good morning, that I think there's a huge way that we can be living in purpose by finding those opportunities.
Absolutely. Like, speaking of hugging, how's the evolution of that culture been for you? I think the last time we talked about this was on, maybe it wasn't this last recap, but the one before, where it was about like we started out. I mean, I don't know. I came into this community with this sense of like hugging is like our secret handshake, and like if you're meeting somebody at a burner event, we were just on board. And then the conversation shifted a little bit to consent check-ins about hugging, and then there was a little bit of growing pains there. But I kind of feel like, I have no evidence of this, but it feels to me like our community kind of figured out that exchange before the pandemic hit. So we were almost like trained for that culture a little bit. And then now here we are coming back into a Burning Man. And one of the things that we remember is being able to just hug everybody. But now it's a little bit of a consent dance.
I feel like my experience has been that we are pretty good at it. I mean, the people that I'm encountering, we have pretty good verbal cues of arms out and are you hugging? Is a common thing. Are you hugging? Are you a hugger? And I'm rarely met with someone who's saying no. But there's most people are well practiced in what they do. They put out their hand or they say no, and so I'm not feeling really any awkwardness anymore. It feels very natural. Most people I know are hugging now. Most people that I'm hanging out with are either on the other side of their, vaccinations, and they're at a level of interactions that they're comfortable, and they know how to take care of the risk level that they're at. And so with a little bit of just awareness with body gestures, I think I'm back to a very normal greeting people with a hug intention.
Yeah. It's the silliest, smallest change was it was that. Like I've gotten just comfortable, like being like, are you hugging? And there's like, see this thing, because I feel like for a little while I was like, do I ask, are you a hugger? Because then is that your label? Does that mean that if you're not a hugger, then you are forever not? It could just be that you're not hugging that exact moment, and that's actually something. One of the gifts I think that the pandemic gave culture and society was that it is okay to be going through a certain experience. Like maybe like right now you're not hugging because you're not feeling in tip-top shape.
Right.
It's not your label forever.
Yeah.
And that is something I think that it helped that more of us are on the same page about whether we're burners or not, that it's become a little bit more of a normal part of the experience of interacting with folks.
I think it's a really, positive trend in culture is like, you see t-shirts and think like, it's okay to not be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this,
a
real increased communication about vulnerability, about struggles. And there's this idea that if you say, oh, I'm not up to going to a party, it's not like a confession of anything wrong. It's like, oh, cool. Yeah, we all are on these roller coasters, and I feel like that is a shift. I feel like that is related to all this. And so, yeah, you can say, I'm not hugging.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It just means like, that's how I'm feeling in this moment. I think that is a incredibly important thing for the evolution of our own growth and our connection with others. Because if we can get to a place where we can honestly speak our truths and we can say, I'm having a trouble in this moment, it means it's okay to say, and I need help.
Yeah.
And it means if you're able to say that sometimes you need help, then I can say, okay, I need help too. And if we live in a world where we all know that we all need help sometimes, we're all deeper connected.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the conversation's moving forward in regards to that in like from every angle.
Yeah.
There was a short period of time where it felt like they call it the oppression Olympics were like in full swing, where there was almost like a race of who can be more vulnerable. And it feels, this is, none of this is scientific, this is just anecdotal. It feels like that pendulum has kind of like stopped swinging as wildly, and more people in our culture, but also in like society at large that we at least have access to here in America, are more okay with like sharing those vulnerabilities. And it's not like this humble brag almost thing. Like it's a sense of, yeah, this is what I'm going through right now. I'm going to need some help. This is insecurities that I had, but we're going to work through it together. And that has been a very unexpected gift of the pandemic and how it's brought more of us together. It served as a bit of an equalizer in all these different levels of culture. This is the experience that I've been having.
I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, I should say in the realm of humble brag that I was being deeply vulnerable before other people.
That is true. That is true. Your humility is so huge.
Way more humble than other people.
Oh my God, such big humble.
Thank you.
What was your favorite moment at the burn this year? What is the first thing that pops out to you?
I think the most significant things about my burn were interactions with my campmates. And because of the extra challenges, there was, a lot of conversations and a lot of witnessing people troubleshoot and problem solve. And I got to see, people that I've known for a long time execute, perform, step up, and just show me a part of themselves that was just so inspiring. And so I've been studying, Brene Brown a lot lately, and realizing that, I'm not quite the leader that I'd like to be. And this burn got me a chance to practice a little bit more of the kind of leadership of facilitating other people to be incredible leaders. I mean, the most impressive thing about Pink Heart this year was the percentage of people that led us to and did the things that had to get done and took on responsibility and owned the stuff. So that was incredible for me. And it's funny because it's like, was it a big fire? Was it some crazy piece of artwork? No, it was human beings demonstrating their growth.
Yeah.
And maybe people that they always were, but I hadn't witnessed it. And this challenge situation forced people to show their true colors, and it was beautiful. Which is, I guess, those are the words we say about Burning Man. Yeah, you get pushed and stretched, and you grow as a person. And so, as looking back at the burn, that's been one of the things I've been able to recalibrate and go, oh, it was awesome. It was the burn that I wanted? No, it was the burn I needed. God damn it.
Yeah.
But there was some beautiful things.
And it is every year. It's not the burn we want. It's the one we need.
So with distance, I've been able to find more and more of these deep things. Like there was somebody that I had a very long heart-to-heart conversation with, where we both were able to speak confess where we thought we didn't show up for the other person and how we thought we'd let them down. And in the process of this shared confession and love and forgiveness, I literally felt like a physical knot leave my gut that had been there for a year.
Yeah.
And like, it was so powerful to release that I didn't even know was a part of, and then to have this incredible love for this person in my life that I was being kept from because of this deep internal thought. Like what does that have to do with the playa and Burning Man? Nothing, except for it was the cauldron that forced this situation to happen that then ended up being transformative.
Yeah. And that's what all of that is.
Yeah.
I'm a photographer, and I'm a portraitist really at heart. Like that's my primary energy. All the other stuff I do revolves around that to some extent. But one of my favorite stories about portrait photography is this famous photo of James Dean, where he's sitting on an apple box and he's got his feet kicked up and he's having a cigarette backstage, and it's this perfect portrait of James Dean. And the story behind it is that they were shooting some other thing, and it was this big elaborate production, and there was backup dancers and big lighting and all this shit, right? And then when they're setting up moving some lights around, he goes to take a break and have a cigarette. And as he's doing that, the photographer just moves over and snaps this photo, and it ends up being the photo. Mm-hmm. And as a photographer, that's basically what I do. My practice is that I set up a bunch of shit and set up a bunch of stuff, but really what I'm looking for is that moment where none of that stuff matters.
Yeah.
And it is the same thing at Burning Man. I like to party, but I feel like the dancing and the energy, this is what I always tell folks, because we had a few virgins this year, and it was lovely to kind of be in that position to give some of this advice and feedback. And I was like, yeah, get the dancing out of your system. Go do all of it. Don't let anybody tell you don't preserve your energy. Fuck it all. Go do all of it. Get it all out of your system. And then one of these moments, what ends up happening is in the middle of all that madness, there will be this one container where you're sitting with exactly the right person at exactly the right space. And this thing comes out, this heart-to-heart happens, this connection happens that you could not have planned for because you've been stripped naked and raw. And that's when the real stuff happens. That's when the real connections happen.
I love that.
And that's why we go.
It's the same reason why, yes, go look for the music that you want to see.
Yeah, that's
don't
the carrot
get
on a
so
stick.
caught on trying to get there that you miss that connection that's waiting for you.
Yeah.
So a question about the photography story is, so my favorite photos are often the ones that are captured like that. Mm-hmm. You have taken some of my favorite photos like that.
Thank you.
But one of the challenges I have in some of our consent-based conversations around the burn is that people will say, you should always ask someone before you take their picture. Mm-hmm. And my feeling is oh, don't do that, please. tell me afterwards you took my picture. You're like,
Yeah.
I really would love you to capture me at sunset or crying and then say, hey, I took your picture. Would you like it or would you like me to delete it? Rather than having everything be an orchestrated kind of self-aware
Yeah.
capture of the moment.
Yeah,
do you ask permission?
That is an amazing topic, actually, and it connects very deeply to other aspects of the conversation. This is a great container for it. Kim Eisenberg is a therapist. She's been on Burner Podcast multiple times. We did a mental health roundtable just before the burn, and we had a brief exchange about consent culture. And what she was sharing, which I agree with, is some of the consent culture conversation has become too obsessively focused on the word yes or the word no. And the challenge therein is that I have personally been there for people and held space for people who have said the yes and the no because they felt kind of pressured. But in reality, they weren't feeling that yes and that no. I myself have been in this experience multiple times where, it's important to have that conversation, but that word is meaningless if you're not utilizing all of the rest of your intuitive abilities, if you're not reading that person's body language, if you're just asking that question and that person is saying yes or no, that's not enough. Because it has become a little bit of an escape of people like not having to do some of their own inner work to like really deeply connect with another person. And it's like the basic concept of it. I can't trust your yes if I can't trust your no. Right. So when it comes with photography, it is not something. And I have a strong opinion about this. Usually I'm very fluid about this stuff. But it is not enough to simply get stuck in this very black and white mode of I said the word, you said the word, now it's consent. It is a conversation. Consent is not a single sentence exchange. It is a deep personal experience. It is a connection. So like as a portraitist, for example, a lot of what I do is an exploration of how, like, where this consent conversation is going. With you, for example, I know enough about you to know that you are a very public-facing personality. The overall art project that you've created, I think we've even talked about on your first interview as well, is Halcyon. Like, Halcyon is here to be captured. Halcyon is here to connect. It's still not black and white, by the way. I would gamble, would 98% of the time be okay with that candid photo.
Right.
If I don't know a person, it's different.
Good point.
If I don't know them, so like one of the things, for example, that I do is like when I'm shooting in an event type setting, like at Burning Man, and this is something that has helped. The fact that I'm 6'5" has helped, is that I can't be a fly on the wall. So I make it a very important point to like present myself. You see me. I am not hiding. I'm not trying to capture like the secret candid, right? And interact, and then I'll read the person. Like, how is their body language? How are they? Have we spoken, right? Or am I? And I can even catch how I'm feeling myself. Am I looking at this person and seeing a cool photo that's going to be a boost to my own ego? Or am I really seeing this person and I am connecting with them and I have good intentions about what imagery I'm looking to capture? I would even like, from that, I would say like it's part of it. It's almost like the consent conversation has even not as much to do with the words of the other person. It starts with you, yourself, in your inner being. Where are you in your internal intentions?
I like that.
Right? So with the James Dean photo, for example, yeah, the whole setup was he was in the middle of a photo shoot. He was there to be photographed. Is it a 100% guarantee that he would have been cool with that candid photo? No. But it was a much stronger possibility that he'd be cool with it because that was where he was. That's what he was doing. So like when I do portrait sessions, for example, like we've set a 2-hour container where I'm taking photos. I'm here to capture images. And I do all this other stuff so that I can get you in that perfect candid moment. But I wouldn't randomly go up and shoot people on the street. Personally, I'm not really into like street photography candids because I think like that leaves too many. And this is a conversation certainly that has a lot to do with Burning Man because there's a lot of magical stuff that can happen in those candid motos. But there's so much of that happening at Burning Man, right? If I was walking around taking candids, like I'd never stop.
Right.
So setting that container is important. Yeah, and I hope that answers it in a long
totally
way.
makes sense. And I think like I gifting influenced me to start a homeless outreach in San Diego. And when I first started doing it, I was much looser with capturing the events and sharing the videos to try to help with fundraising. And that was 12 years ago when we started. And now I think I'm much more aware of this concept of tuning in and consent and recognizing that lots of people probably don't want to have their image in something where it's letting people know that they need help, And so I no longer just include people, without some sort of communication. It's not a, can I put your picture in this? Sometimes it is, I'm making this video about this and gauging how they act, when I'm doing it. Like, okay, they're okay with this situation.
Yeah.
But I do feel like that is an area where culturally we're growing, and I certainly know individually I am too. But thanks for that.
Yeah. No, it's fluid, and I think it starts more internal than we've been really focused. I think on discussing how it's like how the rules are supposed to be played out, but I think it has a lot more to do with the inner space first. And I catch myself too, and I've had situations where. And I do like often, like I might interact with somebody or I might see them like, do you mind if I take this photo? And it's just more, it's my intuition just tells me when to ask, by the way. 98% of the time they say yes. It's very rare that somebody will say no because I think usually I can kind of feel it because I would err. And also I have this advantage as a photographer. I've taken so many photos that I'm okay not taking a photo, right? But yeah, it evolves. I think everybody should be more of like a part of that conversation. I was going to say one of the many cool things that I experienced at Africa Burn was that they had
Like a no photo.
they had wristbands. Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, and I feel like it feels a little bit like the argument against having condoms in schools because they're like, well, if you don't put that on there, like if we don't give out condoms, kids won't have sex, right? Like that ridiculous argument, right? But the photo thing, I imagine I've heard people express that frustrates them because it almost seems like now we're going in with this default idea that this is an event we're going to be like taking tons of photos. But I feel like at Burning Man we crossed that bridge a long time ago.
As soon as we had camera phones, it was done. Yeah, I mean, I remember having this conversation around Utopia years ago, and I even designed like a sticker for people to wear because I love this wristband idea because then let's say you're a photographer and you're going through your pictures.
Yeah.
You see the wristband, you don't upload the picture. Super simple. Yeah. And then we have another wristband that says, please Photoshop and make me look younger.
Yeah.
And then another bracelet that says, no, just kidding.
Yeah. I do get that. I get that very often. I've been wanting to actually print cards that say, like different ones for like some of the stuff that I hear a lot as a photographer, like especially at events, like when people apologize, like, oh no, did I ruin your photo because I walked in front of it? Like I just want to like hand them a card that says, no, you made my photo. I was waiting for you to walk by, like things like that. I actually wanted to like check in with you on your work with Hug Nation. I live in LA now, and I'm seeing it's certainly like downtown LA, Skid Row, like that's something that a lot of the country and possibly even the world is aware of already, as far as like the houselessness situation. I was in San Francisco not too long ago, and it's particularly challenging to observe what's happening there. And in like San Francisco, for example, like now it's become completely a normal part of San Francisco living to anticipate your window being smashed. So a lot of folks are even just like leaving their windows down, like saying like, please don't smash my window. I don't have anything in my car.
Right.
And there's some correlation there with the houseless encampments that are happening. And then in LA, I've started to see some of that stuff trickling down. Like I'm seeing like signs. I was parked in an area in Hollywood a couple of weeks ago, and there was a sign that was like giving you advice on how not to have your window smashed.
Wow.
Anyway, in San Diego has not been in my anecdotal observation as an outsider. It has not felt like it was as much, but I'm just like,
Which is
I'm wondering where it's at.
sad because it's bad, but
Yeah.
you're right. It's not nearly as bad as LA,
Yeah.
San Francisco. But let me just take one step back and say
Please.
that I don't feel qualified to speak to the societal challenges and to what are the solutions for dealing with the number of people experiencing houselessness. What I will say that I have been practicing for 12 years now is doing something, and that Burning Man, through what we talked about earlier, like we have this opportunity to make a difference by gifting to people. And some people, it's a compliment, but our downtowns are filled with people who would love a pair of clean socks or a bite to eat or a little bit of dignity. And so the practice that I've been helping do is just once a month find an opportunity to do that, show people dignity, give them some stuff, knowing full well that it's not solving anything. There are other organizations that are working on better systemic change, but that doesn't mean that in the meantime we just say live in a bubble and not try to make people's lives better.
Yeah.
And so like one thing that I know a lot of people we fall into the trap of, we know we can't give money to everybody that asks, so we just don't look at them.
Yeah.
And this dehumanizing that happens. And so the simplest thing you can do if you're trying to figure out what can I do is just say, sorry, not today, good luck, and look at people. And it is a huge shift from cutting people out and pretending that's not a part of reality to saying, I recognize that this sucks for you, but you're a human too. Good luck today. Good luck today. Good luck today. And then you start to just as I said, look for opportunities to say hello to people. And hi to your neighbor. You go, oh, I didn't finish my food. I'm going to just carry it with me as I go to my car and see if anybody's hungry. At the same time, I think it's important to, in the same vein as that consent culture, is you need to communicate in a way that doesn't offend somebody or assume that they need help. One thing's like, I will say like, hey, have you eaten dinner yet?
Right.
Doesn't mean, you poor thing, can I give you money? You don't want to assign somebody an identity that they don't claim, but you can easily say, have you had dinner yet? Can I chip in towards your meal? Or would you be hungry for this? Because you can say that to anybody. It doesn't mean anything.
Yes. So, all right, let me see how I can organize this. So that was actually where my question was going. And I wanted to, because we've talked about this like in previous episodes, I just kind of felt like this would be a good one to give a quick TLDR description to folks who might not be familiar with Hug Nation, what it is that you've been doing.
So that's actually
what you
specifically
learned.
First Saturdays. Hug Nation is kind of my umbrella that everything is under. First Saturdays is the once a month homeless outreach that we do.
Got it. Okay. And when did you start that? How did the influence come together from Burning Man, and what lessons are you applying?
Yeah, it was about 12 years ago. Was high on the gifting principle and how I think it has the potential to change who we are in the world. And then was in a conversation at a high school reunion with a friend who became a devout born again Christian. And we realized we were reading a lot of the same books. We had the same ideas about wanting to be more of service. We just had different language around it. And so started having lunch together and then decided that we would, on one first Saturday of the month, we would go downtown, buy some stuff at Costco and hand things out. And it was such a beautiful experience. It was everything that I experienced gifting ice cream on the playa, except just on a random Saturday. And I felt so filled with joy and connection. And so we just said, let's just do this every first Saturday.
Yeah.
And then because I am who I am, I started sharing it on Facebook. My partner, Jason, was like, let's be silent about this. Like, good deeds should be done silently. And I'm like, no way, man. That's not how it works. I
It's
get
the
that,
eternal conversation,
get
by
that
the way.
conversation a lot because
Yeah.
so we now regularly have 50 to 80 volunteers that come down.
Amazing.
And so every month, I feel like First Saturdays is half to try to be kind to people that have needs, that could use some resources, and half to educate and train people about gifting. So, over the last 12 years, I don't know how many thousands of people have come through and witnessed the way we do things, the way that we kind of have a circle of in advance. The volunteers work together first and organize our donations. Then we have a circle where we talk about this kind of gifting idea and how everything we do there is simply a prop. The food, the clothes, it's all simply a way for us to have an interaction with another human being.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, like, usually we get way too many volunteers. And so I say, hey, if you can't find something to do, see if you can have a conversation with somebody. Just listen. And that is by far more valuable than a couple of dollars.
Has it ever been, I'm sure it's been discussed, exploring like expanding it to other cities?
We actually, over the years, we have had chapters that have opened in LA and in Antelope Valley. We had one in Canada that opened for a while. None of them have continued. And this goes back to maybe a much deeper question that I should probably pay you therapy time for, but why am I not more driven to grow things? And I have much more of just to show up month after month.
Yeah.
And I have faith that all the people that have gone through it are contributing and gifting in their own ways in the world. But we actually are in the process of finally getting our 501c3 nonprofit and finally getting a place where we can take on big corporate money.
Oh, I love that.
So we could potentially grow in those ways.
Yeah, this episode kind of serves as kind of like a yin yang to like the next one with Buck Down. If listeners listen to that, because that one is like a lot, like deeply analytical. This one is like me, like. But we chat a little bit on that interview about how you can see how Burning Man has changed by observing housing prices and how the cities that trickle into Black Rock City have changed in their economics. So the work that you're doing here and the eagerness that I have that Hug Nation will become a successful nonprofit. I'm sorry, I keep saying Hug Nation. For Saturdays, my apologies. I feel like, God, I'd love to see this expand in the cities, the major cities that trickle in to create Black Rock City.
That's interesting.
Which would be LA, San Francisco, and continuing to spread New York City. The cities that make Black Rock City, there is this inverse, and I'm not articulating this properly, but there is this kind of like inverse influence on what's happening in Black Rock City with the difficulty, like the difficulty, the financial increases, how much more money are we spending on art projects, how ridiculous is it getting out there, all of that is a whole conversation. And there is an inverse observation of like what's happening in our default world cities and how we can contribute to those things and how it's time for some more of that Burning Man energy to trickle out. So I think there's something deep. I think there's something there in the mission statement that could be articulated about going up at least California and getting a strong First Saturdays presence in LA and San Francisco, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that's really interesting and important. I think that across the board, the underneath this Hug Nation umbrella, I have a lot of projects where I'm trying to bring Burning Man energy and behaviors into the default world. So First Saturdays is one. I do twice a day gratitude circles in Zoom to try to get people to share certain aspects of their vulnerability and connection in a kind of a theme camp kind of vibe.
Right.
I also every morning do a love broadcast where I encourage people to go out and do that thing I mentioned of this saying hi to your neighbors. Start with that. Start with acting the way you would as you go through the street. And First Saturdays is another way. Like, how can we start to practice this behavior that we do in the safe container of Black Rock City? You can give someone a gift totally safely.
Right.
You can give a compliment safely. But what people lose track of is it's harder to do it in the default world, but it's totally possible.
Absolutely.
And the more that we can become a community and help each other and become like support groups and remind each other and pick each other up, because the challenge is if you have a bad experience, you walk out your house and you go, "Good morning," and someone looks at you funny.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
That didn't feel good. But if we can like check in with each other and go, "Man, that thing sucked this morning." Oh, keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that the trap is we get so focused on Black Rock City, we put so much of our resources into what we're going to bring in a year, and so much fundraising for that in a year, that we neglect this world that we live in the rest of the year. And I think that what people need to remember is that if you have been to a 10 Principles event, if you feel that you have been welcomed home, you have been given a profound gift. You have a responsibility to not keep it to yourself all year. You have a responsibility to show some courage and find ways to bring that in the default world, whether that is First Saturdays, whether that is saying hello to people, whether that is dressing a little bit funky every once in a while, whether it's giving compliments. It doesn't have to be, quit your job and go build a well somewhere. Right. It can be these teeny tiny ways that we just start making ripples. And then you do a little bitty thing every day, and then oh my gosh, you get an opportunity to do something incredible.
Yeah.
And then somebody says, oh my gosh, somebody in my gratitude group is fleeing their home in Kiev, and then somebody else in the gratitude group in Paris drives 20 hours and picks them up from the border and rescues a refugee. Now, that you don't get there from 0 to 60. You do little things, and then you become the person that sees those opportunities.
Absolutely.
And that's how we change the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's Burning Man. I'm sure I've said this a lot on this podcast. Any burn, it's a psychedelic. It is a more extreme experience because it's probably not sustainable to live that way 365 days a year. But if you can get 20% of the way there, you are now 20% ahead of where you were if you weren't burning. Right. So having that experience of like that eye contact with every single person you interact with and like this constant, openness, vulnerability, if you can just get halfway there, I mean, halfway there is a lot. That's even a lot. Like a third of the way there.
Let's say 4%.
Yeah, 4%. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that, I mean, like, God, it's, as you're describing, you were describing like some of the interactions with folks, like on First Saturdays. What it kept reminding me of is I've gotten like really into. Recently, I read a lot about Alfred Adler, who was a contemporary of Freud and Jung. Okay. And he just is like the one that didn't get as much attention. But like a lot of modern day psychology is sort of like it's Freudian based, where it's you were this person, therefore you became this person, therefore this thing happened, and that's why you have now done this thing. Like it's kind of linear. Whereas like Adler's view was more you're here at the center and you have developed a personality type and you remember your memories a certain way in order to justify the personality type that you are currently. But anyway, he's got like a lot of these interesting concepts, and one of the concepts is the idea that is looking at the world more horizontally rather than vertically as far as relationships. Vertically is vertically is more like the patriarchy. It's, I am in charge. This is the leader. This is the next person down, yada, yada. Whereas horizontally, we're looking at the world more as like we are all comrades. It's not me versus the problem. It's me and you together versus the problem.
Love that.
Right. So like the concept, like some of what you're describing about how to interact with folks on First Saturdays was just making me think of like, oh yeah, like to think of each other as comrades. Like you simply happen to not have food today, maybe.
Right.
But I'm going to check in with you and I'm going to present, like I have some food that I can give you. That doesn't mean that you're beneath me or, this and that. And that's where I think some of that got lost maybe.
That First Saturdays model is based on the theme camp model.
Yeah.
If somebody comes to Pink Heart and I serve them ice cream, I don't think, poor them, they don't have ice cream. We're just, I'm a camp that has ice cream. Yeah. They would like ice cream. Sweet, we both win. Yeah. Win-win. That's what gifting is. And totally. The same is true. That's what the opportunity is at First Saturdays. It's like, wait, I have a bunch of extra stuff. You could use that stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, win-win. This is very great. And I think that I love that kind of we're all comrades, and I think it goes related to that idea of when we can share our vulnerabilities and the fact that we each need help. That even people that are teaching you are also your comrades. And we're all there is the reduction of the hierarchy to we're all on the same raft paddling in the same direction.
Yeah,
is the way we all lift each other up.
yeah.
Maybe that I just went horizontal and vertical the same way. We go forward on the raft. Maybe that's the metaphor.
Yeah. Yes, I get it. So yeah, it was the burn that we needed. It sounds like.
Yeah, I'm going back.
Of course you're going back. You know how many people said they're not going back? I'm like, shut the fuck up. Get back to me in a month.
Yeah.
Get it out of your system. Get back to me in a month. I know for me, reentry has also been a motherfucker for like everyone.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone I've spoken with has like had like some level of difficulty. I personally, for me, the burn, was physically brutal, but it was also, I felt like I was just swimming in a sea of love the whole time. And I had definitely like demons that I had brought with me from the default, which haunted my burn to some extent. And I worked through them. Not at the burn necessarily, but yeah, I felt very much like I was swimming in a sea of love. I connected, I surrendered, definitely by Tuesday. I was like, well, I'm not going to fucking bicycle over to so-and-so camp because I'm like ready to pass out. But I would connect with people deeply. And even afterwards, when I was recovering, isolating for COVID, I found it to be kind of a pretty spiritual experience where the lessons that the burn had delivered to me, I had no choice but to sit there and allow them to download.
Yeah.
So I'm like, was just sitting in laying around on my bed, eating terribly. And I binged the Mighty Ducks, and then shit like that, right? But something happened where everything downloaded, and then once the dust cleared, I feel this like confidence and certainty about the next step in my life that I did not have before, and it feels like, a couple of weeks after 3 nights of ayahuasca, like that kind of feeling is where I'm at right now.
I think, I'm feeling that once I have worked through releasing the expectations, I'm having these awarenesses. Like I had a fraction of the amount of connections with people, but the connections I had were very deep and very powerful. And and when I can remember that, like, oh, right, this was priceless. This was everything I needed. Damn it.
It always is everything we need. Yeah. I did have a bunch of fun too. It was just definitely like when I wasn't, horribly achy and coughing up. I ended up I got cellulitis on my belly button, which is like a super common skin rash. And I was like bleeding from my belly button for like a week and a half. It was terrible.
I went down on Playa, then got COVID on the way home. As soon as I got out of quarantine, I ended up having some gut issue that put me in the hospital. So I basically had a month recovery, and have never been so such a rough reentry.
It's why you and I didn't do this podcast, because we were both like in the emergency room.
Yeah, I was like, this is gonna be a really, really depressing conversation. Like every time you say, "So how was your burn?" you'd hear me go, "Oh."
Traumatic was definitely something a lot of people describe it as. Yeah. But I mean, that's why we do it, though. It is not a fucking vacation.
Yeah, I think your ayahuasca comparison is pretty good.
Yeah. No, it was ayahuascic.
Yes.
It was an ayahuascic experience for sure, complete with bodily fluids and everything.
Absolutely. Yes. Bring me my bucket.
Oh my God. All right. John, thank you so much.
Thank you. I love you so much.
I love you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. Oh, hold on. Real quick before we sign off.
Yeah.
I wanted real quick a real quick snap. This is just like a geeky, like, because people are curious snapshot. So there was like a secondary-ish Esplanade. It's where you were moved to.
Not really.
That's the way it was presented to some of us.
We were initially moved to 8 and F, which I think was a secondary Esplanade, but we were in the middle of the block, and we said, we have too much stuff that we usually put on Esplanade. So then they moved us to 8 and E on the corner, which did not feel like an Esplanade at all.
Okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So are you like campaigning to get back on Esplanade next year?
Yes, in fact, here's my button, and here's will you sign this petition for me while you're here?
Yeah.
No, I mean, we actually, I think
I'll sign whatever
I have
you
a
want.
meeting today with my camp leadership to fill out our final placement form, and I mean, I've had people tell me like, why'd you complain about your placement? I'm like, I honestly don't feel like I complain. I feel like I processed.
Yeah, I don't think you complained.
A shift.
Yeah.
Our camp was designed 12 years ago as an Esplanade viewing station, a beacon that you see. So it can work better on Esplanade. I learned a ton being back in the city. Loved being around our neighbors. Loved what we were able to contribute to the camp, to the city from that place. But if I had my choice, I feel like I could contribute, and we as a camp could contribute more. From that place.
No, for the record, I agree. Like your camp is like every part of it is designed to be an Esplanade camp, and it is like always been one of the, it's like when we're lost in inner playa and trying to figure out which direction to go, Pinkard is part of the compass,
right?
And like that's what it is served as that,
right?
Did they? Do you have reasons for why a bunch of camps got moved? Is my understanding?
Yeah, we weren't given a very clear answer. My guess is that there was some shakeups in personnel in placement, and so I think that there were a lot of people that were less familiar with what camps had offered and things. So it totally makes sense. Like, hey, you've been on Esplanade for a long time. Give somebody else a chance.
Right.
And I mean, I think it should be that way. Yeah. And then at the same time, I think there are some camps that make sense to stay on Esplanade, like Thunderdome. I think should always be there.
Sure, yeah.
I think Pinkheart should be there. I think ranger stations and certain ramparts and things should always be there, and the other ones should be filtered in and out. I'm glad that we got filtered out.
Yeah.
I think that it'd be nice to be rotated back in.
Yeah.
Put us in, coach. Put us back in, coach.
Okay. All right. Good. Listeners, send angry emails to the org. No. Don't do that. Okay. All right. Back to profusely thanking you for all the work that you do for the community. And I love you. And thank you for the camp. And thank you for all the work you're doing in defaults. And as always, your candor and vulnerability. And this was what I needed in order to move on, wrap up my burn and move on.
Okay,
now
we're ready. We're ready for the next step.
I could finally move on to putting out other podcasts.
Thank you so much.
All right, man. You are now listening to the sounds of NorCal-based Nicole Cayenne. The set was recorded at sunrise on Saturday at Burning Man 2022. Hey, that's the one that just passed. Atop the Smile High art car. You can find the whole thing over at soundcloud.com/Nicole Cayenne. That is spelled NicoleCayenne. Please do leave us a review on iTunes. I always trip over that part. Please do leave us a review on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice, and message us if you want to support the show by contributing in any fashion. You're always invited to pitch interviews in your neck of the woods. All of these links are over at burnerpodcast.com, where you'll also find links to other cool audio shit. Our producers are Louis Gallipo in the Great White North in Canada and Michael Seth Prell in Austin, Texas. The Burner Podcast theme music, America's Horse with No Name Remix, is produced by Joman out of Denver, Colorado. He is at soundcloud.com/DJ Joman. Until next time, love, light, and all that other crap. Take us back to the playa, Nicole Cayenne.
My boy, he ain't up to much. My boy, he ain't into love. My boy, he don't get all dressed up. He don't get a second glance. But when he calls, I always say, come on over. We can dance. We can dance. We can dance. Come on over.
Any other questions?
Yes. I think we all had drinks. Dope and the alcohol mix. feel like part of something.
then on and on. Cornerstone of house. We dance till dawn, then on and on.
Take me to the sea.
Have to follow you for the rest of time.
Take me to the sea.
Have to follow you for the rest of time.
Take me to the sea.
Have to follow you for the rest of time.
Give me your love, I'll give you everything. My heart just a beating. Can't control this feeling. Can't control this feeling. Give me your love, I'll give you everything. My heart just a beating. Can't control this feeling.
burnerpodcast.com.